To open the summit, our next speaker is Bernardo Correia, the Secretary of State for Digitalisation of Portugal, in charge of Portugal's digital agenda and its coordination at the European level. Welcome, Mr. Secretary of State. Bom dia.
Good morning, everyone. Always a pleasure to be here at this amazing venue and this amazing city. Before I begin, there's something that I've learned from my American colleagues, which is you should always thank the public service of others who came before you. And I have two predecessors here, Mário Campo Largo and André Aragão Azevedo. And I think when you're trying to build national data strategies, national digital strategies, AI strategies, you're doing that standing on the shoulders of giants. So thank you very much, Mario and Andrea, for your service to the nation and to the efforts of the European Union to become more sovereign and more competitive on the digital landscape. I was... Okay, I think if there's something that I share with Andrea and Mario, it is the idea that we took on this job to bring the biggest amount of prosperity possible to our countries through digitalization and technology. And that's why we do this. That's why we accept the role of Secretary of State of Digitalization, because we believe that this is the way. More or less, Andre. Okay, you can explain to me later. But we believe that the idea is to bring prosperity to your countries through the digital transition, and we believe that we have to be optimistic about this. Right now in Europe, there's a lot of doom and gloom, and you hear that not just in Europe but around the world, right? A lot of pessimism, a lot of things like things going badly, things going wrong. We are proudly optimistic. And we here in Portugal right now, we want to be optimistic about the future. And I just had a few amazing meetings this week, a big global technology company coming to us and saying, like, you have a budget surplus, you have the fastest growing economic growth in Europe, you have the Web Summit, you have those amazing companies coming here, you have some of the most talented people in tech, like this group here, coming to your country on a regular basis. You should smile more. So I'm trying to smile more. Lesson number one. I also spent some time with some people from Eastern Europe recently, and it's a complicated hotspot, and they were saying, like, wow, the amount of talent you have in your country, the universities, what we could do if we had access to all that talent and that universities. So glass half full. We've only just begun. We've started doing a good digital transition here in Portugal, again standing on the shoulder of giants, but there's a lot more that we need to do, and we need to harness that potential that we have. We have a Ministry of State Reform. I think that's actually something that Germany also did recently. The two ministers met, and I met the minister from Germany also recently, and there was this digital sovereignty conference in Berlin this week. And we share a view on this, that in order to do state reform, both at a country and a European level, you need to do two things. You need to simplify, and you need to digitize, and you need to do it in this order. Like it was said by Rodrigo Passos from the municipality of Porto, there's no point in importing and digitizing complexity and bureaucracy. You need to look at our processes, simplify them first, and digitize them later. We want to do this here in Portugal with 5 simple steps. The digitalization part, the simplification part is actually a lot more complex, paradoxically. But digitalization, we're trying to do it in 5 simple steps. We never had a chief technology officer for the Portuguese government. We appointed one last month. We're trying to build, also inspired by others. I'm a very big fan of stealing with pride. One of the big ideas, we were just talking with Ulrich about the example of Estonia. They have 100% of digital services in their country. We want to get there by 2030, if not before. Mobile first, all digital services available to our population, and build AI first services on top of a sovereign cloud solution. And this is where I think we need to start talking about our collaboration with Gaia-X. We are at the critical juncture in Europe, where digital sovereignty is finally being taken seriously, where we need to really start thinking quite carefully about where our data is, who can access it, who can pull that access if they want to, how do we manage that, and how do we build the infrastructure in a safe, secure, resilient way. And it's not just about cybersecurity, there's also kind of natural occurrences. Just we had a blackout last year here in Portugal, kind of complete surprise to everyone. So we need to kind of watch out for everything, and we need to be ready for anything, and that's the role of governments, to be ready for any worst case scenarios. So sovereignty, I think, is also a function of essentially government doing its job, which is kind of preparing for worst case scenarios, and that's what we should be doing. We are also looking at things, obviously, like our national digital strategy, but obviously a big component of that will be our AA national agenda. And here's, again, optimism and why we are confident that Portugal is a great location for AI investments. We have the talent, I mentioned that, which is build a sovereign large language model, which is now available to the scientific community called Amalia, on the back of the talent of 5 Portuguese universities. We just sat there. They were obviously doing important research work, but there was latent talent there we could just be using for sovereignty, but we weren't. Energy, we have one of the world's best energy mixes with over 70% renewables, affordable prices. Funding, we have a sovereign wealth fund that is now directing substantial amounts of money into, for example, the Gigafactory efforts in consortium with private companies. With connectivity, we have one of the world's most connected countries with a subsea cable infrastructure that connects Portugal to North America, South America, Africa, and the rest of the world. And we have, I hope, a very balanced approach to regulation, one that safeguards ethics, responsibility, and the rights of individual citizens, but also there's something that I think is very important that we start doing more of here in Europe. And the Minister Gonçalo Matias and Vice President Verkunen, they were both together here in Lisbon last week at the Web Summit, and they talked about this at length, which is we need to have a balanced way of looking at risk and opportunity when looking at regulation. For too long, I think we've looked only at risk, but we also need to liberate our companies to capture opportunity, because digital sovereignty, at the end of the day, is also a function of economic competitiveness. So if we want to be more sovereign, we need companies in Europe that are able to develop and deliver that sovereignty, and that can also come from economic competitiveness, which is enabled through balanced regulation. Finally, but definitely not least, we can never forget that everything we do is built on people. AI, at the end of the day, we talk a lot about kind of machines these days and robots and intelligent robots, etc. We're building for humans, and let's never forget that. We're building for people, and we're building for prosperity of humans. So when we talk about AI and digital and sovereignty, etc., we must never forget that we still live in a country here in Portugal where only 56% of people have digital skills, basic digital skills, and we need to get up to the target set by the European Union of 80. And if we were able to build everything that we have here today with only 56% of people with digital skills, basic digital skills, then imagine what we'll be able to do when we get to 80 in 2 or 3 years, right? Again, incredibly optimistic about the potential, about we'll be enabled to do once we establish this digital roadmap for Portugal that enables sovereignty, but also enables economic competitiveness and growth. So here's where kind of the call to action. We, governments, need to do 3 things. But the first one is we must walk the talk. For too long, we have lagged behind the private sector in digital innovation, in protecting our own sovereignty and data, because we haven't been great at it. Private sector has been faster, more dynamic in building solutions, and we need to step up. So we must walk that talk. We must develop digital public services focused on citizens and businesses based on sovereign, secure, and resilient infrastructures. And this is where the partnership with Gaia-X is so important, both in terms of data and in terms of the standards for interoperability and operating sovereign clouds. On policies, we must have simple and predictable regulations that respect both freedom and entrepreneurship in responsible ways, balancing risk and opportunity. And on people, we must have a strong focus on literacy and skills Otherwise, we'll have an entire generation that might lose out on the digital transition. So Europe stands at a turning point, and Portugal is optimistically aligned with the Gaia-X vision. We're willing to collaborate with Gaia-X, with European partners, and with the industry to build cloud sovereignty and to advance Europe's competitiveness. But because prosperity in this century will not be built on isolated systems, it will be built on interoperability, on trust, on collaboration, but also on optimism. Thank you very much, and have a great conference.
Dear Secretary of State Bernardo Correia, dear representatives of the European Commission, dear friends of the European industry, dear friends of the academic research community, ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't be with you today in Porto, but I'm very honored to say a few words on behalf of the French government for this Gaia-X 6th summit, which give us the opportunity to witness how much progress we have made all together towards our common digital future. In just a few years, the European Union has reached major milestones in the implementation of an ambitious and comprehensive data strategy with the Data Act and the Data Governance Act. The Artificial Intelligence Continent Action Plan and the forthcoming European Data Union Strategy now pave the way for consolidating our data acquis. These milestones wouldn't be impactful without the very active digital European ecosystem with Gaia-X at the front. Let me mention some successful partnerships which show evidence of the very dynamic nature of Gaia-X and how it inspires our industry like Delegate of Airbus and Data for Nuclear X of EDF. We can be satisfied with all the collective energy and the continuous efforts to develop sustainable data spaces in strategic industrial sectors, in line with the European digital agenda. 2 days ago, I was in Berlin for the Digital Sovereignty Summit. I was able to present my 4 priorities. 1, to have a European preference reflex, particularly in public procurement. 2, to set high standards in terms of data protection that exclude services allowing extraterritorial infringements. 3, to extend the Digital Markets Act to cloud hyperscalers. And 4, to simplify digital regulation in a targeted manner when necessary. These are the foundations of European sovereignty, which we have been able to promote together with our German friends. What we have with the Digital Sovereignty Summit and what we are doing here is showing that we have a common motivation to work together in order to better value the data in Europe and worldwide. I truly believe we now have strong assets to shape our common future in the digital and data economy. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all a pleasant summit.
And joining us from online from Germany, we are honored to have Thomas Jarzombek, Parliamentary Secretary of State at the Federal Ministry for Digitalisation and Government Modernization. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
So a very warm welcome from Düsseldorf to Porto. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it there, but I remember very well being in Porto some years ago on a European Space Summit and have all of the best memories on that. And so Mr. Ahle, Mr. Jestin, Mr. Secretary of State Bernardo, ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed Gaia-X community. So thanks very much for having me here. And 10 days ago, I've been already in Portugal, in Lisbon, on the Web Summit, and so we met already there, Bernardo Correia, at the Eco Summit, and so also thanks for your visit to Berlin the last 2 days on our sovereignty summit on a European level. And so therefore I shall bring you the best wishes from our secretary from Carsten Wildberger, and he's very enlightened about the development in Gaia-X. And so for us it's very important, as years ago we started Gaia-X as an initiative between Germany and France, and I think in the end it didn't achieve everything that it was aimed to, but it achieved a lot. And what it maybe not in that way did as we hoped to was to be an alternative to the hyperscalers, and therefore we have some way to go, some work to do. Things that we discussed on the European Sovereignty Summit that we had in Berlin in the last days. But on the other side, what Gaia-X I think achieved very well was establishing data spaces. And that's pretty important, because in the end, when we talk about digitalization, especially in Germany, a lot of people think about machines, about hardware, about GPUs, on the debate about the AI gigafactory. That's all very important. You cannot do any kind of digitalization without machines. But the core of digitalization is data. And to find the right framework for data through all the levels of industrial production is something that could be achieved with Catena-X, and it's for the automotive industry, especially in Germany, a very important feature in the meantime. And it's necessary to have a digital process through all of the different stages of industrial production. And therefore I know that Ulrich Ahl is very much promoting furthermore, also on the municipal level, establishing standards like Community X, and I think it's the right discussion and the right way to go, because we need a better interoperability. And that's what we see all over Europe, that we have too many islands of data, and we need a better lake, a sea of data, and therefore we need standards and the right framework for interoperability. And so therefore I'm very enlightened to be one of your speakers here today for this very important Congress, and for your very important initiative. And so thanks for all this. And I think Gaia-X is the right initiative to guide to a way of more digital sovereignty in Europe. And that's what we need. Because in the end, we see that more and more part of the industries is getting digital. Software is dominating more and more over the hardware when you look at the automotive industry, but also other industrial sectors, and we have to get better there. That's very important to keep our wealth and to be startups for establishing generative AI to enable digitalization and AI in our municipalities. There is a lot of work to do. I suppose not only in Germany, I suppose all over Europe. But to come back to Portugal, I think it's the right place. Not only because I believe the weather is better than here in Germany right now, but also because what I've seen is that Portugal is very much upfront in terms of digitalization, and they have a very strong team there. And so, all the best for you. Have a good inspiration here today, and good agreements, and best greetings from Germany.
Thank you for being with us, Thomas. It was a pleasure to have you on the Gaia-X 2025 Summit opening session.